Hey there. In this video, I want to talk about a change of paradigm that can be extremely useful to you in your daily life. And it's about being a creator instead of a problem solver. I need to explain what does this really means because it may be a little bit counterintuitive, especially since in our society it's very valuable to be a problem solver. However, I want you to pay attention about how to be a creator in your personal life that leads you to um, a great amount of success and fulfillment. So let's start with the presentation. I decided to add some slides just to give some information to support the video. I think can be a good idea. So most of the ideas are based on Robert Fritz books, The Path of Least Resistance. I found this an incredible, useful book. I read it already twice, and I took so many notes from this book. And essentially, I'm distilling the ideas I found the most interesting and sharing with you, but also mixing a lot of the personal development that I done throughout the years. So there will be some new, in a sense, well, it's difficult to say new ideas, but ideas that are not from the book, just um, to keep in mind. And what's the idea of the book? The main concept is to think of yourself as an artist and bring this mindset to your personal life. Of course, that doesn't mean that you have to become an artist, a painter, or a musician, or stuff like that. Is about the mindset. And the book spends a good amount of time explaining how the creative process works. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. So there are three fundamental insights in the book that essentially is based upon. The first one is that we go through life as a river through the path of least resistance. So think of a river that moves naturally following the path of least resistance. In the same way, we live life according to a sort of natural law that the author called the path of least resistance. So what does it mean precisely? I'm going to explain it now in a little bit. The underlying structure of life determines this path of least resistance. So part of the book is about if you want to change your behaviors in life, if you if you want to improve yourself, if there are some addictions, some bad behavior you want to remove, instead of focusing on the behavior itself, think about the structures that leads to this behavior. Every action you do, every behavior you have is based on a natural structure that makes this action the most natural uh, possible action. So that's the key insight from the books, to think about structures, systems, instead of the particular behaviors. And that's something that I found really powerful. And I think that's very important to really understand this point very well about thinking in terms of the system, the structure underlying that I mean your life is based upon. And the last point is that we can't change the underlying structure of our life. And that's very useful because if we couldn't change it, then our life in a sense would be predetermined, which would be a little bit sad. So those are the three fundamental ideas, and the rest of the book and the rest of the ideas are based on those 3 points. So as I mentioned, here the concept of the structure of our life is key. And the problem is that most of us, we try to focus on specific behaviors. Either we want to lose weight or we want to, I don't know, earn more money or whatever. And we end up failing for some reason or not succeeding as we wanted. And we may we may say, oh, okay, maybe we didn't have enough willpower, maybe the circumstances weren't the right ones, maybe next time will be better, the timing wasn't correct, and we can find many reasons and excuses why the change in behavior didn't work. So another pattern that's very common is the oscillation pattern. What do I mean by that? And that's very easy when thinking about losing weight. So you start the losing weight journey, and by the way, I made a video last week about how I lost 30 pounds in a relatively easy way, and I talked there about some of the ideas from the book. In a sense, it's like a prequel. It's a particular case, particular study of the more general principles from this video, if you want to check them out. And a lot of people struggle and never really get their weight in check because they start either with motivation or a New Year's resolution, or I don't know, they are fed up with their weight and decide to stop being overweight or whatever, and they start losing weight. Things start to work, but at some point their motivation starts to lose. Maybe they start to see some results. They start to getting closer to their goal. Even they may reach their ideal weight. The problem is that many people, once they reach this stage, they realize they say to themselves, okay, I'm done. I finished my goal. I can start now eating a little bit more. And they start eating a little bit more, cheating more. And what happens is that they end up reverting to their original weight, or not necessarily the original one, but they may start losing weight again. So this yo-yo effect is very common for people trying to lose weight. That's extremely common, but also it applies to many different behaviors we want to change, or bad habits we want to eliminate. That we at first were motivated, maybe some YouTuber gave us a motivational talk, and we are inspired, and we start working towards the objective. But at some point, things start to reverse. We start losing the initial impulse, and we may start going back to our original behavior. And that's very natural. That's the path of least resistance, actually, playing a role. And the reason why this is the case is that there is an underlying structure that is making this behavior the natural way. So by structure here is, in a sense, all a set of beliefs, a set of individual perceptions of reality, environmental factors, maybe also your upbringing, everything that makes this decision or this behavior natural. Okay, so in the example, for example, of you may have in your structure certain habits, certain patterns you learn as a child about what's healthy, what's not healthy, or what should you eat, or what's not, what's expected, how many times you should eat per day, what do you like to eat, what you don't like to eat, everything. That a lot of things of this comes from your upbringing, also the culture you are in, what foods are expected to eat, what you cannot eat, and so on. I mean, there are many structural factors, also beliefs, things you may believe that are good for you, not good for you, and so on. So the key here is that we need to identify the structures that make the behavior natural, instead of trying to, just by sheer willpower, to change it. It rarely works, almost never works, in the long run at least. Maybe it may work in the short term, even in the medium term, but not in the long term. And how do we do that? That's the question. Remember that the third principle is that we can change your structure. The question is, how do we do that? And the author in the book mentions two approaches through life. One is the problem solving, or also he called it the reactive-responsive orientation. And that's the common one, and that's the one that leads to oscillation and yo-yo effects. The other one is the creative orientation. And most of us have been raised in the problem-solving orientation, that there is a problem you have to solve and you do whatever to solve the problem and so on. In a sense, life is seen as a series of problems to be solved. So it's a very reactive, like things come to you and you solve them. And this orientation is focused on, as I mentioned, in removing the problems you may have. You are fat, you solve this problem. You are lonely, you solve this problem. You don't have enough money, you solve this problem. So you see, it's all about specific problems that you need to tackle. And as I mentioned, this problem-solving orientation is very, very common in most of the world, especially in the West. It's like it's very natural for us, and even in many jobs, being a good problem solver can be is required for the job. So in a sense, all of our society is based upon solving problems. Instead of the creative orientation, on the other hand, the goal is to, okay, what do I want? And create that. So as I mentioned, the motivation if you follow your life through the problem-solving route is directly proportional to the intensity of the problem. So if you are fed up with some situation in your life, you may get a lot of motivation at the beginning, but as soon as you start moving towards your goal, this motivation seems to fade away, and you are not so motivated to continue solving the problem. Because remember, if your motivation is to solve the problem, in a sense, the closer you are to solving the problem, the less motivation you get, and therefore the more difficult it is to finish with the goal, which can be paradoxical. That's a very common behavior, that you may think that life is, I mean, you are doing your stuff correctly, but somehow things are against you. And again, the problem is because there is a structural conflict, as the author calls it, that create this oscillating pattern. So what's the solution that the author mentions and suggests, and that's what the book is about the creative orientation. And as I mentioned, don't think of like, okay, if I'm not an artist, let's say you are an engineer or a scientist, or I don't know, even like I don't know, a normal work, you have normal work in the supermarket or wherever, and you say, where's, I mean, is this work for me? Is this suitable for me? And the answer is yes. Doesn't matter really what your job is. This is not about, as I mentioned, about specific skill. It's about life orientation, about how you approach life itself. It's about making your life your art. It's about becoming the architect of your life and becoming the protagonist in this game called life. That's essentially what this is about. And as I mentioned in the previous slides, the problem-solving orientation is about, okay, what problems do I have, and solve the problems. In this creative orientation, the main question is, what do I want? What do I want to accomplish? And this can be subtle and may not be so important. It's like, okay, what's the difference? But as we will see, this shift in the way we approach life will make a substantial difference. We will see this, why it's the case. But as I mentioned, instead of saying, I want to lose weight, you, in the problem-solving orientation, here you say, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit. And you create a vision for what you want to be, how you want to look, for example. If you want to earn more money, just because, I don't know, you think it's good for you, you can ask yourself, well, why do I really want the money? What do I want with that? Maybe you want to create a business. That's your motivation. Or you want to travel around the world. and that's your motivation. You want to explore different cultures, or you want to eventually quit your job and start your dream career. So it's a shift in the motivations in our life, about from going to solving specific problems that somehow come to us from nowhere. There is a little control about our life in this problem solving orientation. We're just solving problems we have, but in a sense it feels as if we don't have control about our lives. While in this orientation is all about what do you want, and then make your life around those goals, about those things you want. So as I mentioned, a very common question or a very common problem a lot of people have, myself included, to be honest, is the question of the how. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I find my purpose in life? How do I actualize it? How can I get this dream job? How do I be more confident? How do I lose weight? Or how do I make more muscle? All these questions that seem important, and they are, but they are not the fundamental question. As I mentioned, you cannot start something if you know clear what you want. And I think that a lot of us don't have a clue about what we want. We may pursue a fad, or we may think because someone told us that we should do this, that we should earn more money, or whether we should be more confident. I mean, doesn't matter really. It's not about the specifics. It's about who told you that that's the right things to do. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the question is this coming from you, from your intrinsic desire to do whatever, or because society is telling you to do that, YouTube is telling you to do that, or someone else, your family. And the problem of the focusing on the how before the what is that, I mean, right now, let's say you want to, I don't know, start a business, but you don't know exactly, you don't have a clear picture, you are confused, and maybe you are considering buying a course about how to build your business. So the problem of focusing on the how before the what is that right now, because of the structures in your life, I mean, you don't know really what's best for you. You don't know what's the best strategy necessarily right now. Otherwise, if you knew it, you would have done it, right? So part of the creative process and having a clear vision is that you need to grow yourself. And that's why the personal development comes to place. You need to upgrade from where you are to where you want to be. There is a difference. There is a tension between the current situation, no matter how good or bad it is, and the future situation where you want to be. So it's extremely important to have this clear. And once this is clear, you can start working towards that. And you will figure out, if you focus on the how right away without knowing exactly what you want, you will get stuck by what do you think is possible, by what do you think is reachable, what is realistic. And that will limit your progress enormously, because you see, I mean, think of situation in the past where you didn't know how things would work. Or, for example, in my personal experience, I mean, if I think a couple of years ago, there are so many things that I didn't know back then, and that were out of reach, because I needed to do some work in order to reach to this level. So if you limit yourself by the current possibilities right now, you will be quite limited, because I mean the world is a pretty big place, And there is so many things we really don't know, and we need to figure out along the way. So what instead you first focus on what do you really want with very in a very detailed way, as much detail as possible, and you really have it clear in your mind so that every day you think about this. This by itself will start somehow. I know that may sound a little bit like woo-woo nonsense, but once you have a clear vision, you will start to think about this all the time. You may start to look for patterns, and in a sense, it is as if light itself is helping you, which again sounds a little bit weird, but there is some wisdom there. And I want to read a quote from the book, which is very, very, I really like it, is that people both want to create what most deeply matters to them and simultaneously believe deep down that they cannot have what they want. This creates a conflict, which, as we will see next, cannot be solved. So now there is this concept of tension resolution and structural conflict. Those are two very important concepts from the book. Tension resolution is a very simple concept. It means that as soon as there is a tension, for example, as I mentioned here, let's say you are hungry, that's a tension. The path of least resistance will try to solve this tension. In this case, you will eat. It's a very simple tension resolution system. The problem is that many times there are conflicting tension in place, and you cannot solve both at the same time, and that's what creates the oscillation. So that has a name in the book, and it's called structural conflict, when there are two tensions that cannot be solved at the same time, and they cannot be solved therefore. So here I have an example of, you may have the tension of having your dream career. The solution will be to pursue the goal. But on the other hand, you may have this tension of fear of failure. You may feel afraid of if you pursue it, and what happens if things don't work? What if I fail? My family will ridicule me, my friends. If I lose my job, then what do I do? And maybe I will get homeless. And the solution will be to just refrain from pursuing the goal. So you see, there are two contradictory resolutions. You cannot pursue your goal and refrain from it at the same time. So you can look at the image here I have. There are two rubber bands, and one is attached to the left part, one is attached to the right part. So as you move, let's say you start moving to the right, that means going towards the resolution of one tension. But the second band will start to exert pressure, and the more you move to the right, for example, the more tension the other band will exert upon you. And at some point, the tension will be so powerful that you will be forced to go back to the middle. And that's exactly, that's a very good, I really like this illustration of the oscillation pattern, where you have two tensions that one is pushing to the right, one is pushing you to the left. So as soon as you start moving too much into one direction, the other band will start pressuring you towards the middle. And that's what the author called the structural conflict, and essentially cannot be resolved. And we end up we have some coping mechanisms, and we will see in the next slide, that keep us not really solving this, because it cannot be solved, as we see. I mean, there are two contradictory goals. We cannot have them both at the same time. So as I mentioned, since these structural conflicts cannot be solved, even though we bullshit ourselves, we try to make it work, but it doesn't. And as a consequence, we develop some strategies to compensate for that. And the author mentions three such compensation strategies. One is staying within tolerable levels of structural conflicts. That means that showing again this rubber band example. We stay around the middle. We don't go too much to the left nor to the right. And also that you can think of staying in your comfort zone. You really don't take like a clear decision. You stay in the middle. A second strategy is the conflict manipulation. And this conflict manipulation, as I was thinking about this when making the slides, is, I mean, this is very common in sales tactics, or a lot of YouTubers make this sort of conflict manipulation. And it consists in two phases. The first phase is to intensify the conflict. And in a sense, like think, for example, again, in the case of losing weight. For example, a doctor may tell you, you know what, if you don't lose weight, you're going to die, or you will have this and that health issues. So you really need to take your weight in check. Otherwise, very bad things will happen to you. So in a sense, it's making the conflict worse. It's trying to push you towards one side of the wall, in the example of the rubber bands. So it's trying to negatively affect you so that you take action, so that you get motivated. As I mentioned, also a lot of sales are based upon inspiring you, or I don't know if it's inspiring is the right word, but inspiring you like negative emotion, like fear, like guilty, or pity. This strategy is extremely common. I mean, you can see it everywhere. Politicians do that. As I mentioned, sales people do that all the time. Doctors, even your family may do that. Like they tell you, "Oh, yeah, if you leave your job, you will be homeless," or stuff like that. So in a sense, it's trying to make the conflict worse than what it really is, so that you develop all these emotions, those negative emotions that will make you to take action, because in a sense it's like moving artificially moving you to one side of the wall artificially, so that then you need to take action to reduce the pressure. So you move in the opposite direction, and you get, I mean, all these negative emotions can give you some energy, can motivate you, or can inspire anger you. So you do whatever it takes for a while, but at some point, once this pressure is gone, once you start feeling a little bit better with yourself, then this motivation also goes away proportionally. So you end up again in the middle. So that's conflict manipulation. I probably also you do it all the time. I mean, it's really common, and you can think for yourself in situations that you negatively motivated in a sense, or you like beat up yourself, saying, you know, I'm miserable. I cannot take this anymore. You know, this cannot be the case anymore. And you watch some motivation videos that tell you that you are a loser, you are an incel, whatever, and you go and take action, and you start feeling better. But again, this is not a long-term strategy. And the last one is the willpower manipulation. And here, a lot of people some people, even myself, at first I thought that, okay, that I saw that this positive thinking or affirmation is good to reprogram your subconscious mind so that you can act naturally. And I think that's important to be nuanced here, because it's very easy to take this in the wrong way. So the idea the author mentions is that all this stuff, all this positive affirmation, essentially you are lying to yourself, because you are not seeing reality as it is. And as we discussed at the beginning, or a couple of slides ago, part of the creative process consists in two parts: in seeing reality as it is, and then seeing or visualizing your desired outcome. So if you lie to yourself, if you bullshit to yourself that everything is fine, that you are great, that or all these affirmations that you really don't believe to yourself, then what's going on is that, yeah, you are faking, in a sense, the present reality, which is not what you really want. You really want to say, you know what, if your situation is shit, it's shit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's better to be honest than to try to lie to yourself. Not exaggerate for the good or for the bad. That's what the main idea is here. As I mentioned, as we will see in how the creative process works, it's very important to see reality as it is, being brutally honest with yourself. Okay, so how, there is a structural conflict, as we mentioned. How can we go beyond this structural conflict? And the author called this structure that goes beyond the structural conflict, and it's called the structural tension. And essentially, as I mentioned, this goes beyond just solving problems. And as we saw, a lot of this comes with those structural conflicts because there are beliefs inside us that make us act opposite of what these problems, yeah, they act contrary to what we want to do, in a sense. So this structure that the author calls a structural tension has two components. The first one is to see reality as it is, very, very clear, very honest. Don't bullshit yourself. Don't manipulate your reality. See your present reality, and then, or also at the same time, you have a clear vision of what you want to create in your life. What physical body you want to create, how you want to look, or how you want to feel, how much energy you want, what activities you will be doing in your day-to-day life, what sort of work you want to do, or what type of relationship you want to have. It's all about what do you want to do with your life, what do you want your life to be about. And that's the key of the creative process, to start, in a sense, start in the end, start with the end result. Of course, that this may change over time. Doesn't mean that has to be fixed. And as you evolve, as you develop, you may realize that what you thought at the beginning is not really what you want. You may upgrade this vision, but as you see, if you start, you will, whatever you start, this will move you towards the ultimate vision you may not have clear now because you haven't walked the path. And but the problem is that a lot of times we get stuck at the beginning of the path, trying to know, but what do I do? Tell me the formula, tell me the steps. But there is not such a thing as formula, not such a thing as steps, because ultimately each one of us needs to figure out what's the best for us, because each of us are different people, different persons having different experiences, and really there is no two humans that are the same, and we make very different decisions throughout our life. And where we are is as we mentioned, that we need the present reality, so this will determine what's the course of action. So having this structural tension in mind will develop the path of least resistance. As we said, the path of least resistance in this structure is to the resolution of the tension. So, as I mentioned, it's so important. I cannot stress this enough, the importance of knowing what you want. And a lot of people don't know what they want. They may know what they don't want. If you ask a lot of people, they don't want, I don't know, to be fat, they don't want to be homeless, or to be without a job, or don't want to be single, don't want to be lonely. Forget about what you don't want and start thinking about what you want. But the thing is that a lot of us, I mean, we are quite lazy sometimes. We don't want to really think, contemplate about what we really want. It's much easier to say, I don't want this, I don't want that, than to sit for a moment, to really ponder, to think, what the hell do I want? And this exercise will be extremely powerful if you are serious and you do it. So that's why reflection, constantly reflects about your life is so important, because I mean your life, sometimes we move to a life, we get caught in the routine, but you cannot just allow to let it happen for too long. I mean, it's good every couple of months to reflect, to sit and say and think, okay, where am I going, and not get caught in the routine. But sometimes also it's much more comfortable to just do whatever, follow the path of least resistance and do whatever we are doing now without really thinking about what we want. And it's very important that consider what you want independently of the process. Don't ask at this stage how you will do that. If you don't know how, that's fine. This will come along the way as you start figuring out what you want. And the same with possibility. You may think that this is impossible right now because of your skills, because of your life situation. Maybe, I don't know, let's say you want to, I don't know, create um, a piece of software, let's say, that will change, that you think it changed the world. It can change the world if you really, that no one has figured out this, but you don't have the right skills, or you don't know where to go, you don't have the money. It's important first to visualize what you want. And once this is clear, you can start working towards figuring this out. And but not don't think about how do I do it, or what can I do with my current skills, because this will limit your horizon of possibilities quite dramatically. As we mentioned, there is a conflict or a tension between our present reality and where we want to be. And along the way, we will develop, we will grow, and our tree of possibilities will expand significantly. So those are the principles for knowing what you want. And also, as I mentioned, there is a almost, I don't know if equally, but definitely is very important, is to know what is your current situation, and being not embellish reality, also not making it worse than what it is making see reality as it is. And that can be sound easier than, it can be trickier than what it looks like, because we are used to bullshit, to not tell the truth, to say things in a nice way so that people don't get hurt, or so you have to be careful with this, because it may sound easier than what it is, or it can be tricky, because you have to think that it's almost impossible to see reality by what it is, because there are so many beliefs, and we have so many concepts about how reality should be, that this blinds us to see reality how it really is. And that's even for painters, artists, for example. They really need to learn how to see reality the way it is, because a lot of them, and also in the book there are some examples that they go to do some paintings or to do some observations, and the students, they believe that the colors or the structure are in a certain way, because that's the way you usually think about. You, for example, you always think that the rivers or the water is like blue or white, or the lakes are blue. um, for example, that the sun is yellow or stuff like that. The trees are the leaves are green and the trunk is brown. But if you go and see really real objects, you may see that sometimes that's not the case. There are many variations, and for art students or for artists is extremely important to really portray reality the way it is. So they take it very seriously. So in a sense, we want to translate this ability of seeing reality as it is as much as possible. But that's tricky, as mentioned, because we have a lot of baggage, we have beliefs, we have we love to make everything into a concept because we are addicted to knowledge. We're addicted to put everything into a box, so that when something doesn't fit our patterns, we don't know what the hell to do. So it's much easier for us to just adopt some beliefs and see reality based on those beliefs that for a moment say, you know what, I don't know. But it's very scary to not know, really. So, but if you want to be good at this, you need to try to develop this. And I made a video quite a while ago about how belief shapes your reality. That's a very foundational video. You can check it out, where I talk in depth about beliefs and how they shape your reality in ways uh, you may not really take seriously now. So how the creative process works, and there are 5 main steps. So but we already talked about some of them. So first, you need to start with vision, with the end in mind. Be very clear about what do you want in life. Of course, this applies to many domains. For example, in the domain of health, in the domain of your career, in the domain of your relationships or family, or I mean, there are of course many different different areas of your life where you can apply this process. It doesn't just apply to only one. You can apply to any aspect of your life. So the second aspect is know how reality it is, your present reality, as clear as possible, also as realistic as possible. Then take action, start to take action towards this vision. The fourth step is to learn the steps or the phases in the creative process. I'm going to talk about those in the next slides, but there are 3 stages in the creative process: germination, assimilation, and completion. And those are very natural, very organic stages that you can see all throughout life. I mean, this is a very natural way of conceiving the creative process. You can really think of a creation as a child. You in the first stage, you are is the germination, where you are conceiving, where you are thinking about your vision, when you are making it more and more real, more and more clear in your mind. And at this stage, there is a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, a lot of motivation, because it's something new. You're excited about that. You have a lot of energy because you have this lofty vision about, I don't know, what you want to do with your life or about the world, and this inspires you. That's a really nice state to be honest. It's like a beautiful stage. However, you can't expect to be there forever, and that's where a lot of people fail to do something meaningful, because they get stuck in the excitement part and they jump from one exciting part to the next, and they don't stuck to anything. So be careful of following the full process and being aware that you won't stay in this germination phase forever. You need to develop your creation, and that's where the assimilation phase comes. And the second one, as I mentioned, is tricky because the thrill is gone. like the initial excitement is gone, and you may think for a moment that you lost your passion. It's like, okay, but I don't feel this initial energy anymore. What's wrong? Should I abandon this? But you have to be careful, because in this phase is where the most growth is um, accomplished, because that's the maturation process. Is when you also start to embody your vision. It's like you really internalize so much that you can think about it at the spot, and you can talk about this. You can start talking about this. You can really convince people, because you have this clear, crystal vision in your mind, and you can start to express it to the world, and also you can start expressing it through your creation. So that phase is extremely important, where we go from, as I mentioned, from the mental, the internal, to the real world, to the application. So that's very important. And then the final stage that's also very important is the completion one, is to bring the project to an end. And this may sound like, yeah, that's easy, but a lot of time we are almost, we leave a project just before ending it, because there may be different reasons. We may be afraid of showing this to the world, and the world doesn't give a damn about your thing, or because yeah, you may be afraid of bringing this to completion, to bring this to life. This is quite common. And for example, I mean, in my personal experience, I also have like several projects that I left in the middle. I never finished them, and I mean, it's so important to bring those to completion as soon as possible. First, because it gives you momentum. That's the last step also from this creative process, that um, is important to mention, that you start building momentum. You start feeling more confident the more projects you bring to life. And also because the completion of a project brings you to a new germination. This works as a cycle. Like, you have the germination phase, the assimilation phase, and then the completion phase. But the completion phase is connected to a new germination, so the cycle begins anew. So you can see that it's like a very organic process, and you can also think of how a child is conceived. Like, first you have the conception, the germination, the first stages. Then you have the assimilation, where it starts to develop inside the mother, and at some point the completion has to occur. The baby needs to be born, and this may start the cycle again, or may not, but there is the possibility of starting a new cycle. So, and you can see this is a very organic process that you can see all throughout life. It's a very beautiful process. And the last point I mentioned here is that think of making your life as a creation. Think of your life, the whole life, your whole story, as a creative process, as a child that you want to bring to life, and you want to show it to the world, in a sense. So some more information or some more details about the stages. Germination and choosing our go hand in hand, because it's also important to become good and making decisions and be the more decisive. I think a lot of us in this, because there are so many choices nowadays, so it's very difficult sometimes to be decisive, to be able to choose. But whenever you want to do, there are many ways on which you can do something. I mean, there are many ways you can code a program, or there are many ways on which you can design a website, or uh, write a book. I mean, there are almost infinitely many ways. So the question is, what do I do? Or what, if you have like choices, how do I choose, right? And choosing is a skill we have to develop. And think of, for example, there is this very simple example of choosing out the restaurant. So sometimes, I mean, in the past, I think I was worse. Now I'm getting better at this, but I used to take like a long time, like really thinking, contemplating about the menu and seeing different options and taking too long about deciding because you don't want to make the wrong decision. But really, in this very simple example, for example, we can uh, develop the skill of deciding in, I don't know, 20 seconds, taking no more than 20 seconds. And if you choose something that's not good, okay, so what? I mean, it's not like a big deal. But the more you start taking these decisions on what feels good in the moment, you will start to develop the skill. And of course, in this situation of choosing a menu is very low stakes, but at some point you will need to make decisions that are big, that they may have a big impact in your life. So you need to be prepared, and you can start with those very small, very simple decisions. And as you mentioned, uh, you as a creator, again, you don't have to be an artist, but see yourself as a creator. And as a creator, you choose the whole thing. You cannot rely on others. Of course, others can give you some information, some tips, some advice. Of course, we learn from others all the time, but you are the ultimate architect. You are the ultimate decision maker, and you need to think the whole thing. What you want, how do you want it? But first, you need to choose what you want, as I mentioned. And don't focus on what you don't want, focus on what you want. As I said a couple of minutes ago, choosing what you don't want is easier in a sense because you know more or less what you don't want. But sometimes you don't know what you want because there are way more options. I mean, there are infinitely things you can want in life, essentially. But you already in your life there are things you don't want, and probably it's a limit amount of choices. So in the book, the author mentioned that it's not just about choosing like, okay, I choose this, I choose that, but make it a formal process. And this can be very fast. I mean, so when you make a choice, there's these two steps that you can do. First, conceive the result of what you want, have a clear vision, as we mentioned, and then say, I choose to have blank. So, for example, let's say that you choose to be healthy and you visualize, you picture in your mind how you want to be, how you want to look, all this cool stuff. And then after you do that, uh, you don't need to say it out loud, but you can say to yourself, I choose to be healthy, and so on. And you can do this with with all the choices in your life, that the important choices, of course. Moreover, there are three types of choices you can do: primary, secondary, and fundamental. So primary choices are the things you want by its own sake. So in a sense, it's very intrinsic, or are all those things you want because you want it. So if you want to create a piece of software because you want to bring it to life, that's a primary choice. Or if you want to choose to have a great career, that's a primary that's also a primary choice. It's like a specific goal in a sense, but you want it because you want it. You don't want it because you want something else. If that's the case, that's a secondary goal, not a primary goal. Okay, so that's primary goals, but secondary goals are the ones that support your primary goals. And it's important that they support your primary goals because a lot of times we have discussed in this video, we do these secondary choices, or we may call it secondary choices, but there is no underlying primary goal. If you go to the gym just because you have the membership, I don't know, you don't have any big, really meaningful motivations, it's very easy to skip a day whenever things are not perfect or because we're tired or whatever. While if your primary goal is to be fit, is to be healthy, is to be jack, whatever, then the secondary choice of going to the gym, I don't know, 5 days a week, will be subordinated to this primary goal. Of course, there may be days where you can't go because I mean there may be important reason, of course, but as a general trend, you will be way more motivated, and way more predisposed to perform this action because there is a primary goal that's supporting this secondary goal. And the secondary goals are not necessarily short term. You can perform secondary goals for years. And think of professional athletes that, I don't know, let's say they want to be world champion or to win an Olympic medal. So they train for years and they grind hours and hours. And that takes a lot of time, but it's a secondary choice. It's a secondary goal of going training every day, 6, 7 hours, and be very consistent with the diets, with the sleep, with everything, so that they can reach this ultimate goal of winning a medal, for example. And the fundamental choice are a special type of choices, and those are not about specific things you want in life, but I will just read a quote from the book. So a fundamental choice is, quote, is a choice that has to do with a state of being or basic life orientation, whereas a primary choice concerns itself with specific results and a secondary choice supports those results. A fundamental choice is a choice in which you commit yourself to a basic life orientation or a basic state of being, end quote. So those are the main drivers of your life. So examples of fundamental choice: being healthy, that's a clear one. It's like really a state of being, to be healthy, to be free or to be independent, to have creative independence, to be true to yourself, and to be the predominant creative force in your life. Those are examples of fundamental choices. As we see, I mean, necessarily are not like a specific thing. Being healthy can mean many different things. For some people, maybe like be very muscular. For some people, be like being able to run a marathon. For some people, maybe to be able to be independent by yourself. If you are 80, 90 years old, being healthy is to be able to support yourself, to be able to move without any major pain. So it depends. But being healthy is about the state of being. You feel healthy, you feel good with yourself, and so on with the rest of the examples. And specifically, if you are willing to choose to be the predominant creative force in your life, essentially this is a commitment to go from the reactive responsive orientation of the problem solving orientation in life to the creative orientation. It's like making the formal transition. And of course, if you make the choice, you will activate attention resolution system, as we talked previously. So all these choices will activate those attention resolution systems, and you will move towards that. If you make the choice of being healthy, of course, you won't be healthy right away. It may take you years to be healthy, to reach this state of being you want. And the same with everything, with all the rest, with being the creative force in your life. You may need to take a lot of steps to accomplish that. But the moment you make the formal choice, and you can do the two-step process I mentioned in the previous slide of choosing what you want and then saying it to yourself, I choose to be blank, you can do it with all these choices. And those are very basic and very powerful choices you can implement right now if you really want to. And regarding choosing, in the reactive responsive orientation, the problem solving orientation, we tend to avoid choosing or choosing the right choice. That's very common. As I mentioned, we really are not taught to choose correctly. Either they are giving us like a very limited amount of choices. You have to choose among a certain pool of known choices, or you're just told what to do. And here there are 8 different ways on which we choose, but not choosing the optimal thing we want because of fear, because of social conditioning, and so on. And those are choice by limitation. For example, that's very common when with careers. You have, if you want to go to university, you have a fixed amount of careers you can choose. And in a sense, if you don't know anything else, that's all what you have to your disposal. You don't think that there may be other paths outside of those careers you have chosen or that are to your disposal. Also, choice by indirectness. That means that instead of choosing like the outcome, like what you want, you choose the process. And that's also very common. Like you choose to go to college instead of being educated, or you choose to go to the gym instead of choosing to be healthy, and so on. And that's also very, very common. And as we discussed, this is not the optimal way. Also, choice by elimination, so that so only one option remains. And the key phrase that we hear is that I had no choice. And a lot of times we just sabotage ourselves to make as if there is only one possible choice. So if you are in a relationship and the relationship is not going well, you may create the circumstances that you say, you know what, I had no choice. I had to cheat or I had to leave the relationship. And also with the job, leaving a job. You may have a job, you may not be in the right circumstances, so you may start to, in a sense, to plot so that you convince yourself that there is no other choice, and you need to leave the job. And this can create a lot of unnecessary drama and problems. The next one is choice by default, and that's also extremely common. Just not making a choice, just being stalled and waiting for life to throw us a hand. And of course, we know that that's terrible because things doesn't work that way, as we have discussed. We need to take action, and we need to take responsibility for what we want. Conditional choice, also very common, that you say, I will choose this if this happens or when this happens. A lot of time, we're waiting for the perfect moment that never occurs to change. We're going to start a diet when a new year starts, or when the weather is better. I will go to the gym when it's not so cold, you see. Or I will be happy if I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and so on. Choice by reaction, that's extremely common to overcome a conflict. That's you see this in politics all the time, that politicians nowadays are so bad. There is no visionaries anymore in politics, and that's very sad, because in a sense we are just going chasing problem after problems, and whenever a situation happens, politics try to fill the gap, to fill the hole, but nothing. All these things that we're talking about ourselves can be applied to nations, can be applied to businesses, to organizations, to universities, to all complex systems. I'm going to talk more about systems in the future. I think it's an extremely fundamental issue that I'm very passionate about. So we're going to discuss a lot about different systems, because I think that being able to become a systems thinker is very important for if you want to really understand how the world works. Anyhow, that's very common to choose by reaction. You have and all the creative orientation is all about choosing by creation, not reaction. Choice by consensus is the next one, which is, we are social creatures, and a lot of times we choose just by what everyone else is doing, which is not optimal, of course, and also because it's very difficult to go beyond when you are doing what everyone else is doing. And the last one is choice by adverse possession, which essentially is based in some sort of metaphysical way of seeing the universe, as I mentioned, as the author calls, is like, for example, if something wrong happens, means that it has to be that way. The universe wanted it to be that way. And it may be the case, I mean, we don't know. It's not, I mean, it's not clear to me, could be, but it's also, I mean, if you just stay the way it is because you have this idea, it can be quite victimizing, or in a sense, because you are just prey of your circumstances. So, I mean, things can happen, of course, nothing wrong with that, and there can be great learning opportunities, but also it's important to use this to grow ourselves and not just to say, okay, it's what it is, the universe wants that way. All right, so assimilation. What assimilation is? We have germination first, then assimilation. So here's when the consolidation occurs, like when this idea that we have gets crystallized and start to take form. However, it may seem that little progress is made, and there are plateaus a lot of time during this assimilation. It may seem that progress is not being made, and a lot of people quit at this stage because they're not seeing any progress. This is very common in language learning, for example. If you want to like reach the basic A1 level, it's very quick, it's very fast for most. I mean, at least for most languages. Maybe for Chinese it's not that easy, but I don't know if you know how to speak English and you want to learn Spanish or French or German. The first stage, there is a lot of growth, is relatively fast, but at some point we get stuck, and it seems that we are not moving. But in these stages where in the example of language, is where the language, in a sense, you are start to embody the language. The language is start to become part of you. But that's a process that takes time, and it may seem that you are not making big progress. So you need to be very aware of this, of how this process works, and that's why I'm talking about these stages, because many times we get stuck in life and it seems that things are not moving, but they are moving in the background. And what else? So yeah, there are two phases of assimilation and also embodiment. Embodiment occurs also in this assimilation, where you really makes the creation part of yourself, internal and external phases of assimilation. First, you need to internalize it so that it becomes second nature. And the example of the language is also very good at this, because you need to internalize the language until you can like think in the language or even dream in the language. And then communication, externalization becomes second nature, becomes natural. You don't have to think about it. And doing assimilation, assimilation is very generative. It's quite beautiful stage, because things will start to figure out how things work along the way. That's why you need to start moving. You need to start giving the first step so that you start to gain momentum. And during this phase, things will start to figure out, you'll start to connect the dots. But as we mentioned, if we get stuck at the beginning, it's very difficult to see ahead, because you don't have the big picture. Once you start moving towards your goal, you will start to, of course, you may fail and have to retrace your steps, but that's not the problem. The problem is that you, I mean, the thing is that you need to take the first steps, and then this process will start unfold. Remember, that's an organic process. And during assimilation also occur strategic moments. And those are situations that that can make your that can really determine the success or not of your creative endeavor. Because as we mentioned, a lot of time there is this lack of progress, and we may decide to quit or to do something else. It may be, I mean, the thing is that during these strategic moments, it's not clear whether what's the best decision to make. It may be that you need to move to something else, or it may be that you need to stuck to your project and finish. So that's why it's called strategic moment, and making a decision will impact the final outcome significantly. So, and that's the difficulty. It's not clear what to do. So you need to become aware that those moments will occur, and I mean there is no recipe for that. Time delays also is a very important concept related to the fact that uh, things are not automatic. Whenever you want to do a life takes time to develop, to assimilate, and there are time delays. For example, again, if you start a diet, it will take a while until you start seeing progress, or if you go to the gym also, or if you learn a language. Whenever you do it, there may be a period of time when you don't see result, and you cannot just quit before seeing those results, but also it's very common. And also it's very important that during the whole creative process, but especially during assimilation, because things don't move fast, we may face situations that make us, I mean, we may face bad situations that and we may start to like analyze too much, to really think too much about those situations, about what we could have done better, or to really we question ourselves. We may be overly critical with ourselves, but it's very important to assess the situation as it is, as we mentioned in before, reinforce what you want and move on, not get stuck in the past, not get stuck with our mistakes, because I mean we make mistakes all the time, that's natural, and as you make more and more decisions and choosing, it's inevitable to fail and to commit mistakes. That's completely fine. Just acknowledge the mistake and move on. Finally, well, before completion, there is the concept of momentum, which also occurs during assimilation. And here, this exponential curve is very illustrative, because momentum, you can think of momentum as a snowball effect, that at the beginning, it's a good idea to start small, because those small projects will, if you accomplish them, if they're easy, you will start to gain momentum, you will start to get confidence, and this confidence will prepare you for the next challenge, and so on. The next challenge you will be able to accomplish, and then you will move to the next one, and this will build momentum, and in an exponential way usually. So that's why it's important to trust the process also, because as we mentioned, things are not instantaneous. They take their time. Everything that's meaningful to you will take time to develop. And we live in a very fast pace where we want everything fast, and it's very difficult to fight against that. But sometimes it's better idea to just stop listening to this get quick rich schemes or all this nonsense, because really that's just a distraction and may break the momentum you took so long to build. So it's very important to keep the momentum so that you can accomplish better or higher, more difficult challenges, and develop even more the process. Finally, you have completion. Completion is when we bring a project to an end, and the thing is that you will decide. You have to decide when the process is completed. That's also part. You remember that we are a creator. Even if we decide to be creators, we are responsible for the full process. We decide when the creation is complete, and it's very important to develop this skill to assess when we decide, okay, it's complete, because it's very easy to look for external validation or external acknowledgement from others so that they tell us when the project is done. But remember, you are the creator. You need to tell the world when your project is complete. And usually there are two different emotions or two different experience of completion, which also I find very interesting. One is of fulfillment and satisfaction, which is what you may expect after creating something beautiful, no? But also there is the experience of depression and loss. And the author, for example, mentioned it, the postpartum depression that many women face after having their kid. Or also, he mentioned some writers that they felt so depressed after finishing the book, maybe because it was difficult, was painful during the process, that the only thing, all what you want to do was to finish it for once and for all. So be aware of that, that not everything can be flashy, but it's important to bring the process to completion, because as we mentioned, this will lead to a new cycle, a new germination process, so that everything continues moving. Also, the author mentions the concept of learning to receive, that, as I mentioned, you need to also be okay receiving the fruits of your creation. A lot of people are very like giving oriented and are very bad at receiving. So that's what the author makes a point. And also this concept of reverse alchemy, that sometimes uh, we are not used to like having good stuff, so we make it bad on purpose. Like people sometimes they have like a great relationship and they sabotage it because somehow they don't feel worthy of this relationship, so they start sabotaging so that things go wrong. And this again, you need to learn to live with the creation and get the fruits from that. And also, as we also mentioned that you are the only one that can decide where, when the the this creation is complete. So it's very important to develop this sense of judging. And finally, transcendence, the concept of transcendence, because ultimately there is a even higher purpose. The author mentions that this creative process, I mean, this creative process, in a sense, is based on a ultimate superior force, and is this force of transcendence. And let me again read a quote from the book, because it explains very clear what transcendence is. And quote, transcendence is the power to be born anew, to make a fresh start, to turn over a new leaf, to begin with a clean state, to enter into a state of grace, to have a second chance. Transcendence makes no reference to the past, whether your past has been overflowing with victories or filled with defeats. When you enter a state of transcendence, you are able to create a new life, unburdened by both the victories and the defeats of the past. End quote. So that's a beautiful quote, in my opinion, because in a sense, the question is why you are creating. And the author, mentioned that essentially it's like a higher calling. And in a sense, the way I see it is like this creative process, in a sense, we are playing to be God, because depending on, of course, of what do you see as God, but you can think of God as this creator, as a creative force. You don't need to think of God like as a person. I mean, a lot of people have this idea of God as the force of life, of the God that is the substance of life. You can think of that if you are not, if you don't believe in the standard, let's say, representation of God, the Christian God, this ultimate force of life. So in a sense, you are using this force of God to create. You are becoming part of it. So that's the ultimate way of why we are so driven to create. Because I mean, that's also pretty remarkable that we humans are very driven to create since the Stone Age. With those first paintings that there were like, there was no reason necessarily to create that, but by the creation itself. And no matter how bad the circumstances can be, there is this drive within us to create. And you can interpret this to just being a reflection of this ultimate force, of ultimate creative force in life that makes this reality. So that's personally a beautiful way to end this book, and to put everything into a context that essentially this creative process is not just to do something, is in a sense part of the hero's journey, is part of transcending yourself to growing to the ultimate stage you can be, the ultimate levels of development. And to ignore the past, to really transcend your ego, transcend your selfishness and all your or pettiness that we have in our life, and to really just become, in a sense, one with the universe and coming home with no expectations, demands, or ulterior motives. So that's, I think, a great way of ending the video. So hopefully, if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe. And I think this will be a pretty long one. I didn't want to make it too long, but there were a lot of concepts. So I think that encapsulates the ideas from the book. You can read it. I think it's a great book. Also, to get the audio version, remember The Path of Least Resistance by Robert Fritz. And if you like this format, also leave a comment or whatever. And yeah, more videos will come in the future. So that's it all for today. Bye.